So it's Sunday night, and you're staring at this this exorbitantly priced, like freshly unboxed moleskin journal.
Right. The really nice one with the thick paper.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The one that makes you feel official. And you've just decided that tomorrow you aren't simply going to wake up a little earlier. No, you are going to undergo a complete cellular metamorphosis.
A total overhaul.
Right. You are going to wake at 5 a.m. You're going to run a 10K, consume something, I don't know, exceptionally green in fibers for breakfast, and then sit down to study advanced phonetics for 2 uninterrupted hours.
As one does on a Monday.
Naturally. You are essentially demanding that your current self just dissolve inside a chrysalis. So a completely different, hyper-disciplined creature can emerge by dawn. And this is the focus of our deep dive today, looking at the behavioral psychology and the linguistic frameworks of habit formation. Because this source material we're looking at, it really digs into why these grand personal overhauls just spectacularly fail, and how to actually build a neurologically sound system for learning that fits into, well, our messy reality.
Yeah, and that Sunday night feeling, it's just the ultimate human fantasy. And what's fascinating here is that exact moment, like sitting at the desk, writing out this draconian mandate for yourself, it actually provides a massive, intoxicating dopamine surge.
Wait, really? Just the planning part?
Oh, absolutely. Your brain is rewarding you simply for the intention of doing it.
Huh.
Because if you think about it from an evolutionary perspective, the ability to project into the future and plan for survival, that was a massive cognitive advantage for early humans.
Right, okay.
So our brains developed this reward system for the mere act of conceptualizing a better future.
So I'm getting the neurochemical payoff of being this marathon-running polyglot before I've even set my alarm clock.
Precisely. You get the high without doing the work. And the ego demands this immediate dramatic narrative because incremental progress feels agonizingly slow.
Yeah.
It's devoid of that intense dopamine spike. We want the identity of the hyper-productive paragon of virtue instantaneously.
Like downloading a software update?
Yes,
Yeah.
Exactly. But the friction arises because the half-life of that intention-driven dopamine high is incredibly brief.
How brief are we talking?
Psychologically speaking, that neurochemical momentum typically evaporates within about 36 hours.
Wow. Okay, so 36 hours, which means we can usually white-knuckle our way through Monday.
Usually, yeah.
You're coasting on that residual weekend energy. Maybe the sheer novelty of this new persona carries you through that first day.
Right, you get through Monday on fumes.
But then we hit Tuesday morning. And Tuesday is where these grand illusions are completely dismantled.
Tuesday is ruthless.
It really is.
It is the crucible of habit formation because it's the day the biological bill comes due.
Let's unpack the mechanics of that Tuesday collapse because according to the source, it's rarely just one thing, right? It's a spectacularly predictable domino effect.
A total chain reaction, yeah.
So it begins with the circadian rhythm. You've mandated this 5 a.m. wake up, but your body is used to 7:30 a.m. So when that alarm goes off on Tuesday, your biology essentially stages a riot and you hit the snooze button.
Yeah, that first domino is pure biological homeostasis.
Right.
You've introduced a massive shock to your physiological system without any gradual adaptation.
Not at all.
So the body perceives this sudden sleep deprivation not as this noble ambition, but as a metabolic threat.
Like you're in danger.
Exactly. So it shuts you down. The body almost always wins that initial battle when it comes to sleep.
Right, so you hit snooze. And that initial concession, even if it's just 10 minutes, it immediately breeds this subtle undercurrent of guilt.
Yes, the guilt starts early.
Because you've already violated the sacred Sunday night mandate.
Right.
And so to self-soothe that microscopic feeling of failure, you reach for your phone on the nightstand.
Yeah.
Just to, skim the headlines and wake up your brain.
And we both know the trajectory of that decision.
Oh, yeah. 45 minutes evaporate into the absolute ether of doom scrolling. Suddenly, the morning is just gone.
Just gone.
The 2-hour deep work immersion session is rendered totally obsolete before it even began.
Yeah.
So then the rationalization kicks in, right? The streak is irrevocably shattered, the week is ruined, and you might as well just resurrect the grand plan next week.
You're thinking Monday, it's always next Monday.
Always next Monday.
Yeah.
And the Moleskine journal gets buried under a pile of mundane mail.
And what's fascinating is what you've just described is a systemic mechanical failure, yet we universally internalize it as a profound moral failing.
Oh,
We are looking at a classic dichotomy here, which is willpower versus strategy. On Sunday night, We rely entirely on willpower, which is a finite, highly exhaustible resource.
It runs out.
It absolutely runs out. It is conscious brute force resistance against your natural environment and your established neural pathways.
Okay, let's unpack this, because relying on willpower seems a lot like trying to power a high-performance vehicle with, like, a standard AAA battery.
Yes.
It might give you a tiny initial spark on Monday, but it fundamentally cannot sustain a massive engine.
That is the perfect mechanical equivalent. Throughout the day, every single time you navigate traffic, or you suppress frustration during a meeting, or you choose a salad over a pastry at lunch, you are draining that AAA battery.
Right.
Psychologists refer to this as ego depletion.
Ego depletion, okay.
By Tuesday evening, after navigating just the relentless micro-stressors of modern life, that battery is completely flat. You have zero cognitive endurance left to force yourself into a 2-hour study clock.
Okay, I have to play devil's advocate here, though. Because if we acknowledge that willpower is basically a AAA battery, and we stop relying on it, are we just lowering our standards?
Not exactly.
Well, isn't aiming for that high-performance vehicle the whole point of ambition? If we don't demand greatness from ourselves, it feels like we are just accepting mediocrity. You know, like we're just saying, well, I guess I'll just be average.
Right, but that is the exact trap the ego sets for us. It conflates the ambition of the goal with the effectiveness of the method.
Oh, okay.
We are abandoning the pursuit of mastery or fitness or linguistic fluency. We are abandoning a flawed methodology.
The battery.
Yes, exactly. Failing by Tuesday isn't a character deficiency. It isn't innate lethargy.
Yeah.
You aren't fundamentally broken. Your ecosystem is simply failing you because you are utilizing raw cognitive endurance instead of an automated system. Strategy is the architectural blueprint of your daily life. It's intelligent design that removes the necessity of being a superhero every single morning.
So we are swapping out the fuel source, not the destination.
Precise.
We are replacing the AAA battery with a self-sustaining engine, because the collapse itself, that Tuesday morning disaster, isn't what ultimately destroys the goal. It's what we do to ourselves after the Tuesday collapse that guarantees we won't try again on Wednesday.
This is where we have to critically examine the concept of follow-through. We severely misunderstand what it takes to translate abstract intention into tangible execution.
Give me an example of that.
Okay, think of a corporate executive in a boardroom. Her visionary rhetoric about market expansion might be impeccable. It's inspiring to the whole team. They're ready to go.
Right, big vision.
But if her logistical execution on the supply chain is woefully deficient, the company still fails.
So all of that executive on Sunday night, impeccable visionary rhetoric, completely deficient logistical execution on Tuesday morning.
Exactly.
But when we look at the wreckage of our Tuesday, we don't analyze it like a supply chain problem, do we? We immediately default to character assassination. We survey the damage and declare, I am devoid of discipline. I am inherently lazy.
Which is a profound cognitive fallacy. We conflate self-flagellation with self-improvement.
Yeah.
And the biology of this reaction is incredibly detrimental. When you attach a behavioral failure to your core identity, when you tell yourself you failed because you are intrinsically flawed, you trigger a massive stress response.
Oh, really? Just by being mean to yourself?
Yes. You flood your system with cortisol.
And cortisol is a survival hormone, right?
Yeah.
So what is that actually doing to the brain in that moment of failure?
Well, when you attack your own character, your brain interprets that intense negative emotion as a literal physical threat.
Like a predator.
Exactly like a predator. In response, the cortisol flood diverts blood flow away from the prefrontal cortex, which is the slow, logical, analytical, problem-solving sector of your brain.
Okay, the part we actually need.
The part you desperately need. And it reroutes that energy to the amygdala to prepare for fight or flight. So by brutally criticizing yourself, you are biologically paralyzing the exact part of your brain required to look at Tuesday objectively and design a better logistical strategy for Wednesday.
That's wild.
You literally cannot problem solve because your brain thinks it's about to be eaten.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. I'm realizing how deeply ingrained this is in our culture. We genuinely harbor this illusion that self-castigation is a currency.
Yes.
We act as if beating ourselves up severely enough somehow pays the cosmic toll for our lack of execution.
It's a penalty fee.
Right. That's like saying, well, I didn't do my 2 hours of phonetic study, but I spent 20 minutes calling myself an irredeemable failure so the ledger is balanced.
Right.
It feels like productive work, but it's just biological self-sabotage.
It's an emotional transaction that serves absolutely no practical purpose other than keeping you trapped in the cycle of paralysis. So, if brute force willpower is a myth, and beating ourselves up biologically prevents us from engineering a solution, we have to look at how we actually construct that self-sustaining engine of strategy.
The system.
Right. And the foundation of that engine relies on manipulating time and eradicating friction.
Which means we need to talk about probably the most perilous phrase in the English lexicon. I will practice when I have time.
A spectacularly lethal delusion.
It really is, because time is an absolute vacuum.
It is.
It will inexorably fill itself with whatever is most salient or frictionless in your immediate vicinity.
Yeah.
If you just leave a vague 2-hour block open on a Tuesday evening and hope you'll spontaneously elect to do intense cognitive labor, you won't.
No, you absolutely were.
That vacuum will fill with, I don't know, organizing your digital desktop or rewatching a sitcom or whatever requires the lowest metabolic output.
Because the brain is a cognitive miser. It wants to conserve energy. The antidote to this is engineering hyperspecific behavioral triggers.
Okay, what does that look like?
You must anchor the new difficult behavior to an existing automated part of your day. So instead of a vague time block, you engineer a trigger. For example, while the espresso machine is brewing, I will execute exactly 3 minutes of shadowing practice.
3 minutes. Okay, I have to say my immediate reaction to that, and I know anyone who considers themselves a high achiever feels this too, is that 3 minutes is borderline insulting.
Oh, sure.
If I want to be fluent in a language or write a novel or run a marathon, 3 minutes lacks any sort of grandeur. It bruises the ego to set a goal that microscopic.
It absolutely bruises the ego. The ego wants the montage of the 2-hour deep dive immersion.
Yeah, we want the cinematic training sequence.
Exactly. But neurologically speaking, consistency trumps intensity every single time.
Really, every time.
Every time. When you are building a new habit, your primary objective is not to maximize the output. It is to establish the neural pathway.
Okay, explain that.
Every time you repeat an action, your brain wraps a fatty substance called myelin around the nerve fibers.
Myelin, okay.
Right. Myelination acts like insulation on a copper wire. It makes the electrical signal travel faster and more efficiently.
So you have to actually build the physical infrastructure in the brain first.
Exactly. You have to pave the road before you can drive the high-performance vehicle on it.
I like that.
By making the task exactly 3 minutes and tying it to an automated habit like the espresso machine, you are ruthlessly mitigating the barrier to entry.
You're making it so easy you can't say no.
Right. You are making it so frictionless that you don't require that AAA battery of willpower to execute it. Once that neural pathway is myelinated and the habit is automated, then you can optimize the duration. But you must start infinitesimally smaller than your pride dictates.
Paving the road makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
But even with a fully myelinated pathway, even with a hyper-specific 3-minute trigger attached to my morning coffee, I know there will be mornings where my brain just violently rebels.
Of course.
I look at the textbook and I feel this intense internal emotional resistance.
And that rebellion is what we often classify as self-sabotage, specifically through procrastination and impulsivity.
Right, the dark arts of avoiding work.
Exactly. We need to dissect the mechanics of these reactions because our standard cultural definitions of these behaviors are completely backwards.
How so?
Well, we view procrastination as laziness, someone avoiding work because they simply refuse to exert effort.
But it's actually an emotional regulation issue.
Right. It is vehemently misunderstood. Procrastination has very little to do with laziness. It is a failure to manage negative emotions.
Okay, walk me through that. What's happening in the moment?
Think about what happens when you sit down to untangle complex grammar rules or write a difficult piece of code. The task is ambiguous. It requires a high cognitive load, and it immediately triggers a subtle fear of inadequacy or incompetence.
Like, I don't know if I can actually do this.
Exactly. Your amygdala, the threat detection center we talked about earlier, registers that negative emotion as a literal existential threat.
It's hard to wrap my head around the idea that my brain perceives reading a textbook as a predator.
I know, it sounds dramatic. But to the primitive parts of the brain, a high metabolic cost combined with emotional discomfort is a threat to survival. It wants to protect you from that vulnerability.
Okay, so what is the result of that?
You retreat to a mundane, controllable task to self-soothe. You suddenly decide that right now, in this very moment, it is absolutely critical that you alphabetize the pantry or respond to 5 low-priority emails.
Oh my God.
You aren't being lazy. You are actively mismanaging cognitive anxiety by seeking safety in a highly controllable environment.
That reframes so many of my Sunday afternoons. I'm alphabetizing the pantry because my amygdala is trying to save my life from a spreadsheet.
Exactly. You are seeking control.
And then there's the other side of the coin, which is impulsivity. If procrastination is running away from a negative feeling, impulsivity seems to be the gravitational pull toward an unearned immediate reward.
Right. It's the brain seeking a frictionless dopamine spike. Your smartphone, glowing on the periphery of your vision, offers immediate gratification with 0 cognitive metabolic costs.
It's free dopamine.
Free dopamine.
So how do we outsmart our own survival instincts? If the amygdala is sounding the alarm over a textbook and the dopamine receptors are begging for the smartphone, how do we force compliance?
One of the most effective countermeasures comes from behavioral economics, and it's called temptation bundling.
Temptation bundling, okay.
The core mechanism is synthesizing a want with a should. You take the difficult cognitive labor that your amygdala wants to avoid, and you fuse it to a highly desirable immediate reward that you only get to experience when doing the work.
So the classic example from the source being that you exclusively permit yourself to consume a specific, exorbitantly priced artisanal coffee only while you were doing the phonetics practice.
Yes, you are essentially hacking your neurochemistry. You are teaching your brain to associate the difficult task with immediate gratification, rather than forcing it to wait for the long-term abstract gratification of eventual fluency.
I love this. It's like building a Trojan horse for your own neurochemistry. You're hiding this intimidating, boring cognitive labor inside a giant wooden horse made of delicious, high-end coffee.
That is a brilliant visualization, yeah.
The amygdala lets the coffee through the gates, and the work just sneaks in with it.
You are totally bypassing the threat response. But temptation bundling isn't foolproof on its own. We also have to incorporate accountability, though we need to be very precise about what kind of accountability actually works.
Right, because the default is to operate in a vacuum. We keep our ambitious goals a secret.
We do.
We tell ourselves we don't want to annoy our friends, but in reality, we are just insulating our egos from public failure.
Exactly.
If I don't tell anyone I plan to run a 10K every morning, no one knows when I quit on Tuesday.
Operating in a vacuum feels emotionally secure, but statistically, it is highly detrimental to long-term execution.
But when we think of accountability, we usually think of punishment.
Right, and we must avoid toxic, punitive accountability. We aren't looking for a drill sergeant to shame us when we fail, because as we established, shame triggers cortisol and shuts down problem solving.
So what do we need instead?
We need clinical, supportive oversight.
I'm struggling to see how this doesn't just devolve into a venting session between friends where you both just complain about how hard it is and let each other off the hook. How do we keep it clinical?
It requires a fundamental shift in the language we use. It means possessing the maturity to go to a peer and say, I succumbed to procrastination today.
Just stating the facts.
Right.
Yeah.
I ended up alphabetizing my pantry instead of doing the coding work because I felt overwhelmed by the ambiguity. But I am recalibrating my strategy for tomorrow by breaking the code into 3-minute segments.
Oh, wow.
You bring the failure out of the shadows, you strip it of its moral weight, and you treat it purely as a logistical data point to be analyzed.
Which brings us to arguably the most critical part of this entire framework, which is the internal monologue. If we are shifting the external accountability to be clinical and objective, we have to do the exact same thing to the voice inside our heads.
Absolutely.
We have to completely overhaul our lexical framing to move away from that cortisol-inducing punishment.
This lexical recalibration is where the real structural change happens. It's about taking those toxic, fatalistic internal monologues and translating them into objective diagnostic statements.
Let's walk through how this plays out in practice, because the shifts in the source material, they're subtle, but incredibly powerful.
They really are.
Think about that AAA battery analogy. The default, a fatalistic statement, is always, I just have no willpower. But the reframe shifts that entirely.
Right, you pivot to the analytical, I am over-reliant on willpower.
I am over-reliant on willpower.
Notice how that transforms a perceived permanent character flaw, having no willpower, into a mechanical inefficiency. It communicates to your brain, the machine itself is fine, We are simply utilizing the wrong fuel source.
It takes the identity completely out of the equation.
It does.
And you do the same thing with the permanence of failure. Instead of the melodramatic, I always fail at.
You state it empirically. My current strategy has not yielded dividends yet.
Yet.
That yet is crucial. You acknowledge that it is an iterative, strategic issue, not a final verdict on your innate potential.
And when you hit a roadblock, instead of playing the victim and saying, something always stops me, throwing your hands up.
Right.
You assert agency by saying, I must clearly delineate my barriers. If something is stopping you, it's not a mysterious cosmic curse.
No, it's a point of friction.
It's a logistical barrier, like your phone being in the same room, that can be identified and systematically dismantled.
This is exactly how you bypass the ego depletion we discussed earlier. When you feel that urge to quit at 8 p.m., instead of the desperate, I can't control myself, you diagnose the biological condition. I am susceptible to impulsivity when cognitively depleted.
I am susceptible to impulsivity when cognitively depleted. It sounds so clinical.
It is. You recognize that your prefrontal cortex is simply exhausted. You aren't out of control. You are just tired.
So the solution isn't to somehow summon more control at 8 p.m. It's to engineer an environment where you don't have to make a willpower draining choice at 8 p.m.
Exactly.
And finally, when you find yourself cleaning the house instead of working, instead of the reductive, I am just lazy.
We acknowledge the psychological hurdle. I am actively grappling with procrastination. You are dealing with emotional dysregulation and the amygdala's threat response, not an innate lack of drive.
These linguistic shifts, they move the paradigm entirely from punitive self-flagellation to objective engineering-based troubleshooting.
They do.
It really shifts the entire reality of how you interact with your own behavior. It strips the moral weight off of everything. And that leads to a really profound realization about the ultimate objective here. The zenith of this endeavor is not the attainment of flawless perfection, because the pursuit of perfection is a paralyzing illusion.
Because perfection implies a system that never fails, which biologically and environmentally is just impossible. The true goal, simply put, is to become someone who returns.
Someone who returns. I love that. That completely redefines what success looks like.
It does. Think about the Tuesday derailment again.
Okay.
You hit snooze, you consume the junk food, you succumb to the doom scrolling, you abandon the linguistic practice entirely.
A worst case scenario.
Right. For the perfectionist, the game is over, the streak is broken, the identity is ruined, and the effort is abandoned.
See you next Monday.
Exactly. But for the person who returns, Wednesday is approached not with a cortisol flood of shame, but with analytical curiosity.
So what does this all mean in practice? You look at the wreckage of Tuesday and say, okay, my strategy didn't yield dividends. I was susceptible to impulsivity because I didn't delineate my barriers.
Right.
How do I lower the barrier to entry for Wednesday? How do I make the trigger even smaller? You actually find the beauty in the Tuesday derailment because it provides the exact data you need to build a better system.
Yes. Resilience isn't about an unbroken streak of flawless days. It's about having the audacity to return to the fray the very next day with a marginally superior, slightly more compassionate strategy.
You never jettison the ultimate objective just because a microstrategy failed.
Never. You ruthlessly iterate on the plan. You lower the barrier to 1 minute if you have to. You engineer a more enticing temptation bundle. But you remain steadfast in the pursuit, operating like a mechanic, tweaking an engine rather than a judge handing down a sentence.
This has been such a profound recalibration of how we operate. To bring all of this together, success in habit formation, whether it's mastering C2 level English, overhauling your physical fitness, writing a book, whatever, it is never about brute force. It is entirely about intelligent system design.
Entirely.
It's about recognizing the biological limitations of our willpower. It's about eradicating friction to build those myelinated pathways, utilizing temptation bundling as a Trojan horse for our neurochemistry, and ruthlessly iterating on our plans using objective language instead of character assassination.
It's about working in tandem with the reality of human biology, rather than fighting an exhausting, unwinnable battle against it.
Which leaves us with a totally new, slightly provocative angle to consider as we wrap up. We spent this entire time unpacking how our brains are fiercely wired to protect us from the existential threat of ambiguity, cognitive load, and learning something new. How our amygdalas literally perceive difficult tasks as predators.
Right.
If that biological reality is true for us as highly motivated adults, what does that mean for how we are structuring environments for others?
Oh, that's a great question.
Think about early childhood education or even corporate onboarding programs. Are we inadvertently building classrooms and training seminars entirely designed to trigger the amygdala?
Probably are.
Are we demanding brute force willpower from children and employees in systems that are fundamentally devoid of intelligent, frictionless design? Is the structure of your daily life designed for a mythical, hyper-disciplined cinematic protagonist? Or is it meticulously calibrated for the exhausted, messy, complex reality of your actual existence? What would happen if, starting tomorrow, you designed your entire routine strictly for your absolute worst days? It's something to seriously mull over the next time you are asked to learn or teach something difficult. So picture this scenario, because I think almost everyone listening has been here at least once.
Oh, yeah.
You're standing in a high-stakes corporate boardroom. Or maybe you're mingling at one of those those really sophisticated, slightly intimidating industry networking events.
Right.
And you have been preparing for this specific moment for weeks.
Yeah.
You know you're dressed sharp, your posture is great, your adrenaline is buzzing in that really good, productive way.
Yeah, you're ready.
Exactly. Then someone, maybe a crucial client or a senior executive you've been trying to impress, they turn to you and ask an impromptu, highly technical question.
Oh, boy.
Right? And you smile, you take a breath, you open your mouth to deliver this perfectly crafted sentence, just locked and loaded with advanced, precise vocabulary to demonstrate just how well you know your field. And suddenly, nothing.
Just completely gone.
Your mind goes completely catastrophically blank. The silence just stretches. You can literally hear the air conditioning humming in the background.
It's the worst.
You can feel your heart starting to hammer against your ribs.
Yeah.
And you're desperately searching your brain for a word you've used 1,000 times, but it is just gone.
Yeah, it is the conversational equivalent of stepping off a cliff in the dark.
Yes.
You are in total free fall, and the physical sensation of that panic is just incredibly visceral. I mean, you feel a flush of heat, your throat gets tight. It's a terrifying loss of control.
Okay, let's unpack this because today's deep dive is dedicated entirely to this exact, universally agonizing experience.
It really is universal.
It is, and we're pulling insights today from a really fascinating set of notes and transcripts. And interestingly, this source material actually originates from a language learning program.
Right.
One that's designed specifically for highly advanced, like C2 level non-native speakers. But as I was reading through this, I realized the mission of our deep dive today goes way beyond just learning a second language.
Absolutely.
This applies to anyone who has to speak under pressure.
Yeah, anyone at all.
So we are going to decode the biological and psychological reasons why any of us freeze up when the stakes get high. And more importantly, we're going to explore a very specific framework for mastering the art of talking your way right out of it.
Which is an incredibly empowering framework to understand. Because you know when that freeze happens, when you're standing there staring blankly at that senior executive, the immediate internal response is almost always self-condemnation.
Oh, absolutely.
The internal monologue turns toxic instantly.
You just beat yourself up.
Right. You think, I'm not smart enough, or my memory is failing me, or I am exposing myself as an absolute fraud right now.
Yeah.
But the data and the psychological research we are looking at make something very clear, and this is so important. This phenomenon has absolutely nothing to do with a lack of intelligence.
Okay.
It is a highly specific neurological and psychological cascade. It has a mechanism. And the beauty of a mechanism is that once you understand how the gears turn, you can learn how to dismantle it.
That is such a relief to hear out loud. It's not a personal failing. It's a mechanical glitch.
Exactly.
But, before we can start fixing the glitch, we really need to understand the biological betrayal happening inside our own heads, because it genuinely feels like a betrayal.
It really does.
So what is actually going on neurologically when the words just evaporate into thin air?
Well, what you're experiencing in that agonizing moment of panic is what cognitive scientists refer to as a cognitive bottleneck.
Okay.
To understand why this happens, we have to look at the brain's evolutionary hardware, specifically the amygdala.
The amygdala, yeah.
Yeah, the amygdala is a small, sort of almond-shaped cluster of nuclei deep within the temporal lobe, and it functions as your brain's primary threat detection center.
Okay.
It is an ancient, primitive piece of hardware designed to keep you alive in a dangerous world.
So this is the part of the brain that, thousands of years ago was scanning the horizon looking for lions in the tall grass.
Exactly.
Is the alarm system.
That is its exact purpose. But what's fascinating here is the problem we run into. Human society has evolved exponentially faster than our neurological hardware.
Oh, sure.
So in a modern corporate boardroom or at an upscale cocktail party, there are no lions.
Right.
There are no physical predators. But the amygdala doesn't know the difference between a physical threat to your life and a psychological threat to your social standing.
Wait, really?
Yeah, it scans the environment, registers the intense social pressure of a high-stakes conversation, so, the fear of public embarrassment, the potential loss of professional status,
Right.
and it misinterprets that social pressure as a literal physical threat to your survival.
Wait, let me make sure I am grasping the scale of this.
Okay.
My brain is literally interpreting the CEO asking me about Q3 financial projections as a predator that is about to eat me.
Neurologically speaking, yes, there is very little distinction. The alarm bell rings just the same. And the physiological tragedy of that response is what causes the freeze. When the amygdala rings the alarm, it initiates a mild fight-or-flight response.
Okay.
It floods your system with cortisol and adrenaline. It pulls blood away from your extremities and your digestive system and routes it to your major muscle groups.
So you can run away or fight.
Exactly. And crucially, because your brain is trying to save your life, it violently reallocates your cognitive resources.
I see.
It decides in a split second that you do not need access to complex, abstract thought to survive a tiger attack, so it temporarily restricts access to the prefrontal cortex.
The prefrontal cortex, I remember this from biology class.
Yeah.
That's the part of the brain right behind our foreheads. That's where all the high-level executive functioning happens, isn't it?
It is. It's the seat of human intelligence, essentially.
Yeah.
The prefrontal cortex is responsible for complex problem-solving, intricate grammatical structures, nuance, and your highest level, most sophisticated vocabulary. So when the amygdala detects a threat, it essentially shuts down the very database you need to sound articulate.
It's like your brain has a panicked bouncer at the door of a club.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Right. The amygdala is this incredibly high-strung bouncer. And the second it senses any stress in the room, it just slams and locks the heavy steel doors to the VIP room, which is the prefrontal cortex. And all your fanciest, most sophisticated words are hanging out in that VIP room, drinking champagne, totally inaccessible.
Exactly.
And you are just left stranded out in the alleyway with your most basic elementary vocabulary, just stuttering like a total novice.
I think the bouncer analogy captures the mechanics perfectly. You are literally locked out of your own linguistic VIP room by your own anxiety.
Right.
You haven't forgotten the words permanently, your intelligence hasn't vanished. The bouncer just isn't letting you access that specific region of the brain in that specific moment of stress.
Okay.
The advanced grammar and the nuanced vocabulary are trapped behind a biochemical wall.
That makes so much sense of the physical sensation. But it brings up a really frustrating contradiction for me.
What's that?
If it is just biology locking the door, why am I always so utterly stunned when it happens?
Right.
Like if I am sitting at my desk reading a highly complex industry report or studying a new concept, I feel like I have total mastery over the material.
Sure, you feel great.
I can read it. I understand every nuance. I feel like an absolute genius.
Yeah.
But then I walk into a meeting to discuss it. The bouncer locks the door, and I realize I have absolutely nothing. Why does the brain let us feel so incredibly confident right up until the moment we fail?
That shock, that sudden realization that you aren't as prepared as you thought, comes down to a massive mental trap detailed heavily in the source material.
Okay.
It's a psychological phenomenon known as the illusion of competence.
The illusion of competence.
Yeah, and this is a crucial concept to grasp if we want to become better communicators. The illusion is fundamentally a fatal confusion between two very different brain functions.
Which are?
Passive recognition and active recall.
I want to challenge this a bit, just playing the devil's advocate, because I think a lot of people listening will feel the same way.
Okay, go for it.
If I am listening to a dense audiobook on my commute or reading an article on my sofa, and I come across a word like, say, ubiquitous,
Great word.
I know exactly what ubiquitous means in that context. I don't need a dictionary. My brain processes it seamlessly.
Right?
So if I know what it means, why can't I just summon it and say it when I need it? Is the brain actually treating reading a word and speaking a word as two completely segregated activities?
It absolutely is, and this discrepancy is the source of so much professional frustration. Let's look at what is actually happening when you read that article on your sofa.
Okay.
You are consuming content passively. The author has already done the incredibly hard work of retrieving the vocabulary, organizing the syntax, and structuring the argument.
Right, they do the heavy lifting.
Exactly. The word ubiquitous is presented to you on a silver platter. Your brain simply has to recognize it. And because that recognition feels so smooth and effortless, your brain falsely registers this passive consumption as true active mastery. It gives you a dopamine hit of competence.
It tricks you into thinking, because I effortlessly understand the author's brilliance, I possess the author's brilliance.
That is exactly the trap. But recognizing a word when prompted utilizes a completely different neurological pathway than spontaneously generating that word from the depths of your memory.
I see.
Think about the sheer friction of real-time processing. When you are standing in a boardroom speaking extemporaneously, meaning speaking without a script or preparation, you are under an immense cognitive load.
Oh, for sure.
You aren't just calmly retrieving a single word. You are simultaneously maintaining appropriate eye contact,
Right.
managing your physical posture to project confidence, reading the micro-expressions of the executive you are talking to.
To see if they're buying it.
Exactly. You're calibrating your tone and anticipating where your sentence needs to end up.
When you list it all out like that, it sounds like an impossible juggling act.
It is a massive computational effort for the brain. Active recall under that kind of pressure requires a robust, heavily myelinated neural pathway.
Myelinated.
Yeah, basically a thick, well-worn road in the brain that allows information to travel at lightning speed.
Okay.
And you do not build that paved highway by passively reading on a sofa. Passive reading creates a faint dirt path.
Wow.
So the illusion of competence shatters the second you have to perform, leaving you staring at an audience, feeling entirely unequipped and wondering where your vocabulary went.
So we vastly overestimate our active vocabulary because we spend like 90% of our time in passive consumption.
Precisely.
Okay, so the biology locks the door and our psychology sets us up to be completely blindsided by the locked door.
Right.
But there's a third piece to this puzzle that feels even more destructive.
Let's hear it.
When we inevitably stumble, when we hit that cognitive bottleneck and lose our words, why does it hurt our pride so deeply?
Oh.
We've all been there. You forget a word, and you don't just feel slightly inconvenienced, you feel a hot wave of shame.
You really do.
You feel like you want the floor to open up and swallow you whole.
Yeah.
What is driving that intense emotional reaction?
That brings us to the primary antagonist of this entire process.
Okay,
The linguistic ego.
the linguistic ego.
Yes. And the linguistic ego is particularly brutal for high-achieving adults.
I can imagine.
If you think about the profile of a successful professional or someone who is mastering a highly advanced skill in their native language or in their specific comfort zone, they possess a certain professional gravitas.
Right.
They are known for being articulate, they are witty, they can persuade people, negotiate complex deals, and navigate subtle social nuances with ease.
Yeah.
Their very identity is inextricably tied to being seen as competent, eloquent, and intelligent.
That resonates. I mean, you spend years building a reputation. You know how to command a room. You know how to drop the perfect razor-sharp counterargument at exactly the right moment.
Right. But when you are forced out of that comfort zone, whether you are trying to speak a second language at a C2 level, as the source material discusses, or you are simply trying to explain highly complex new information under sudden pressure,
You're going to stumble.
you are going to stumble. The bouncer locks the door, the advanced words vanish, you suddenly have to resort to much simpler phrasing.
You'll lose that razor-sharp edge.
Exactly. And the collision between who you think you are and who you are sounding like in that moment creates a profound state of cognitive dissonance.
Cognitive dissonance. That is one of those terms that gets thrown around a lot. What is it actually doing to the speaker in that specific moment of panic?
Well, cognitive dissonance is the intense mental discomfort of holding two conflicting realities or beliefs at the exact same time. The brain hates contradiction.
Okay.
On one hand, your deeply held self-image is, I am a sophisticated, highly intelligent professional with a massive vocabulary. On the other hand, the inescapable reality of the current moment is, I am stuttering, I am losing my train of thought, and I am using the vocabulary of a middle schooler.
Oh, man. I try to picture that feeling. It's almost like looking in the mirror, fully expecting to see yourself in a tailored, custom CEO suit. But the reflection shows you wearing an oversized, wrinkled teenager's tuxedo from a high school prom.
That is a brilliant way to visualize it.
The mismatch is so severe that your brain just panics.
It panics at the mismatch. The ego simply cannot tolerate this perceived degradation in your intellectual status. It feels like a literal threat to your identity.
So what does this all mean? I imagine the desperation to sound smart, to force the reflection back into the tailored suit, is exactly what makes us freeze and ultimately sound foolish.
Exactly.
Because the moment the ego feels threatened, it doesn't just relax, it goes into overdrive.
It does. It triggers a state of hypervigilance.
Hypervigilance.
Because your ego is terrified of sounding foolish, it starts essentially auditing every single syllable before it leaves your mouth.
Oh, wow.
It acts like an incredibly harsh internal editor. You become paralyzed by the fear of making a syntactic error. Meaning you are terrified of messing up the grammatical order of the sentence or using a less than perfect word because you are convinced that any flaw will expose you as an imposter.
So because you are analyzing every word before you speak it, the conversational momentum just dies.
It's gone.
You're demanding such extreme, flawless perfection from yourself that your brain essentially blue-screens, and you just stop speaking altogether.
You fall into the trap of paralysis by analysis. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, this is crucial to understand. Conversational fluency, whether we are talking about mastering a second language or just surviving high-stakes public speaking, it requires momentum.
Right.
It requires a continuous forward-moving flow of ideas. But the ego's absolute refusal to tolerate a slightly less agile, a slightly less perfect version of itself is the very thing destroying that flow.
Wow.
By fiercely trying to protect your image of perfection, you ironically guarantee a complete catastrophic breakdown in communication.
It is the ultimate self-sabotage cycle.
It really is.
The amygdala bouncer locks the VIP room because of stress. You realize you only have your basic dirt road words available. Your ego looks at those basic words, refuses to be seen using them, and so you just stand there in silence, sweating through your shirt while everyone watches you mentally flail.
It is a painful summary, but highly accurate to the neurological and psychological reality of the freeze.
Okay, well, we have thoroughly diagnosed the disease.
Yes, we have.
If perfectionism and the ego are the enemies of momentum, how do we actually keep the momentum going when the perfect word inevitably vanishes?
Right.
Because we've established that we cannot permanently fire the bouncer. The amygdala will hijack you eventually.
It absolutely will.
So what is the protocol? How do we bypass the ego and keep moving?
We have to learn and internalize what the language acquisition sources call the ultimate mastery tool.
Okay.
And that tool is strategic circumlocution.
Strategic circumlocution. I mean, even the name sounds like a superpower. Break that down for me.
Yeah.
Is that essentially like playing the board game Taboo, where you have a word on a card, but you aren't allowed to say it, so you have to describe it using other words until people guess what you mean?
That is the perfect analogy. Literally translated, circumlocution means talking around something.
Okay.
It is the deep, internalized understanding that true fluency, true advanced mastery of communication isn't about having a magical, 100% reliable recall of a massive dictionary. No one has that.
Because even native speakers blank out on their own language all the time. I mean, I do it constantly.
Everyone does. There is actually a formal clinical term for it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, lithologica.
Lithologica.
It is the tip-of-the-tongue phenomenon, the temporary inability to remember a specific word or name. It happens to the most articulate orators on the planet.
Oh, I believe it.
The difference between an amateur communicator and a master isn't that the master never forgets a word. The difference is entirely in how they react when the word disappears. True mastery is about agility. It's the agility to fluidly pivot conceptually when that optimal word eludes you, and to do it without breaking your stride.
Let's make this concrete for the listener, because the source material provides a really illuminating practical scenario. Let's role play this out to see the difference in action.
Okay, let's do it.
You are in that critical meeting we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
You have the floor. You want to make a strong, decisive point, and the perfectly crafted sentence in your head is, we need to mitigate the risks.
Great sentence.
But right as you open your mouth, the cognitive bottleneck hits. The bouncer locks the door. The word mitigate is just gone. You just have a terrifying blank space in your brain. Walk me through the amateur response first.
Okay, so if we look at a less experienced communicator, what the language learning sources might classify as a B1 or intermediate learner, their immediate reaction to that blank space is to freeze. Their ego takes over. They literally stop talking. They stare up at the ceiling, they furrow their brow, they might start snapping their fingers, and they stammer in this agonizing silence for 10, maybe 15 excruciating seconds, desperately hunting through their brain for the exact word mitigate.
Right.
They let all the conversational momentum die because they are exclusively fixated on vocabulary perfection.
And as an audience member watching that, it makes the whole room profoundly uncomfortable. You're watching someone mentally drown.
Yeah.
All the authority they had built up just evaporates while they search for one word.
Right.
But a master, the C2 advanced communicator or the seasoned executive, how do they handle the missing mitigate?
Well, the master instantly, almost subconsciously, accepts the loss of the word.
They just let it go.
They do not fight the bouncer. They do not waste a single millisecond trying to pry open the VIP room door. Instead, they utilize strategic circumlocution.
Okay.
They seamlessly pivot to a conceptual description using the basic, everyday words they do have immediate access to. So instead of freezing, the master might effortlessly say, we need to dynamically reduce our exposure to these vulnerabilities.
We need to dynamically reduce our exposure to these vulnerabilities. That sounds incredible. It sounds just as authoritative. And more importantly, the sentence didn't stop. The train kept moving down the track.
That is the magic of it. The listener in the boardroom never even realizes you forgot your original phrasing.
Yeah.
They don't know you wanted to say mitigate. You maneuvered around the linguistic roadblocks so smoothly that the flow of the conversation was entirely preserved.
Yeah.
And you achieved this because you made a fundamental, instantaneous shift in your priorities. You prioritized the transmission of the idea over the perfection of the vocabulary.
Prioritizing the transmission of the idea over the perfection of the vocabulary. I want everyone listening to really let that sink in.
It's huge.
You did not need the word mitigate to get the point across. The core point was simply lowering risk. And you communicated that beautifully without missing a single beat.
And in doing so, notice what else you achieved. You bypassed the linguistic ego entirely. You didn't allow cognitive dissonance to take hold. You accepted that the tailored suit wasn't available. You threw on whatever jacket was nearby, and you kept walking with total confidence.
Okay, understanding circumlocution conceptually makes complete sense to me.
Yeah.
I mean, I deeply want to be the person who smoothly pivots instead of staring at the ceiling and snapping my fingers.
Don't we all?
But how do we actually bridge the gap between understanding this and executing it? How do we wire our brains to do this under intense pressure?
That's the real challenge.
Because when the amygdala is screaming that there is a lion in the room, it is very hard to stay calm and force a pivot.
It requires deliberately rewiring your brain during your low-stakes practice time and rigorously recalibrating the toxic internal narrative you have immediately after a conversation.
Okay.
The sources outline a fascinating psychological reframing exercise for this.
To say it, better reframing.
Well, yes. We have to fundamentally change the way we talk to ourselves when we stumble. Usually when you lose a word, have to talk around it, and step out of the meeting, the immediate internal thought is a self-deprecating shame spiral.
Like we talked about earlier.
Right. My mind went completely blank. I couldn't remember a basic word, and I sounded like an absolute fool.
I'm going to challenge this step, honestly.
Okay.
The sources suggest replacing that shame spiral with an objective diagnosis. They say you should tell yourself, I experienced a temporary cognitive bottleneck due to performance anxiety.
Right.
I get the theory, but telling myself I had a cognitive bottleneck sounds like something a robot would say after dropping a plate.
That's funny.
If I just bombed a presentation, I'm not going to magically feel better by using a clinical academic term in the hallway.
That is a very fair critique, but the robotic clinical nature of that phrasing is exactly why it works.
Really?
Yes. When you use highly emotional language, I bombed, I am a fool, I sounded stupid.
What?
You are feeding the amygdala. You are confirming to the threat detection center that you are indeed in severe social danger, which keeps your cortisol levels spiked and guarantees you will be even more anxious for your next meeting.
So it's a vicious cycle.
Exactly. By forcing yourself to use clinical, objective language, I experienced a biological bottleneck, you drain the emotion out of the event.
It is just data.
It is just data. You are essentially telling your amygdala, there is no lion. This is just a mechanical plumbing issue in the brain. It de-escalates the physiological panic.
Okay, I see where you're going. You use the clinical language as a circuit breaker to stop the anxiety loop.
Precisely. And once you break the panic circuit, you have to dismantle the perfectionist trap.
How do you do that?
Well, instead of thinking, I completely ruined that presentation because I forgot my advanced vocabulary, you must actively reframe it as a strategic victory.
Okay.
You tell yourself, I successfully employed circumlocution. I successfully prioritize fluid communication over grammatical perfection. You have to train your ego to take pride in the pivot rather than taking pride in the vocabulary.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because this connects to something so much bigger for anyone listening who wants to be a better leader, or a more persuasive speaker, or even just a better conversationalist at a dinner party.
Absolutely.
The ultimate goal of language, any language, native or learned, is human connection and the transfer of ideas.
Yes.
It is not about being a flawless walking dictionary. By reframing the experience this way, you are essentially granting yourself permission to be intellectually messy in real time, as long as the idea makes it across the table.
But granting yourself permission mentally isn't enough to change your biology.
Right.
This raises an important question. How do you do the actual physical rewiring of the brain?
You have to force the brain to adapt its pathways.
You do. The sources recommend a very specific, highly actionable homework assignment to build this agility.
The taboo word exercise. I found this part incredibly practical.
It is arguably the most effective way to train for the freeze. When you are practicing for a presentation alone in your office or just prepping talking points for a meeting, you deliberately practice this agility by intentionally forbidding yourself from using your most common critical industry words.
So if I am giving a major presentation on, let's say, supply chain efficiency,
Okay.
I force myself to practice explaining the entire concept out loud without ever being allowed to say the word efficiency, or maybe even supply chain.
Yes, and I warn you, the first time you try this, it feels incredibly frustrating.
I'm sure.
Your brain will stall. But neurologically, something amazing is happening. By intentionally blocking the main, well-paved highway in your brain, the word efficiency, you are forcing your neurons to carve brand new circumlocutory neuropathways.
You are taking a machete and hacking a new dirt path through the jungle.
Perfect metaphor. And as we discussed earlier with myelin, the more you struggle to find alternative ways to describe efficiency, the more you wrap those new neural pathways in myelin sheaths.
So you are physically thickening the detour routes in your brain.
Exactly. You are paving the dirt roads. You are training your brain to build robust detours.
So that when the actual presentation happens and the real cognitive bottleneck hits and the bouncer locks up the word efficiency, your brain doesn't panic.
Right.
It already knows exactly how to take the scenic route, and because that route is now well paved, it takes it without slowing down the car.
You are literally training for the freeze. You are building the muscle memory for the pivot. And the sources also mention that actually physically writing these concepts down, taking a pen and paper and engaging with these workarounds, or journaling about terms like hypervigilance and cognitive dissonance.
It physically solidifies that neuroplasticity.
It does. Writing forces the brain to slow down and process the alternative routes more deeply, cementing your resilience under pressure.
Knowledge is most valuable when it is deeply understood and physically applied. By writing it down, by practicing the taboo word detours, you are shifting from that passive illusion of competence on the sofa into true active mastery on the stage.
You are taking control away from the amygdala and giving it back to your conscious mind.
This has been such an illuminating journey. We started with the sheer, visceral terror of the mind, going catastrophically blank in a big moment, which we now understand is just the amygdala hijacking the brain.
Right.
Our evolutionary bouncer locking up the VIP prefrontal cortex because it confused a CEO with a lion.
We explored how the illusion of competence sets us up for complete shock, masking the extreme cognitive friction of real-time processing.
Yeah.
And we looked at how our linguistic ego, that teenager in an oversized suit,
The worst ever.
demands a level of absolute perfection that ultimately leads to paralysis by analysis.
And the antidote to all of this mental gridlock is strategic circumlocution.
Yes.
Playing taboo with yourself.
Yeah.
Prioritizing conversational momentum and the transfer of ideas over finding the perfect dictionary-level word.
Exactly.
It is about letting go of the ego, embracing the detour, and keeping the ideas flowing without breaking stride.
It is ultimately about granting yourself the grace to be human under pressure and focusing on what truly matters, connecting with your audience, and ensuring your message survives the stress test.
Which leads me to a final, somewhat provocative thought I want to leave you with today.
Yeah.
We have spent this entire deep dive talking about how to pivot and survive when you accidentally forget those big, impressive, advanced words.
Right.
But if the true mark of masterful communication, as the experts say, is prioritizing the transmission of an idea over the perfection of vocabulary, Could our deep-seated obsession with acquiring a massive, sophisticated vocabulary actually be making us worse communicators?
Oh, that is a fascinating reversal of the entire premise.
What if, tomorrow, you intentionally tried using circumlocution in your native language, even when you aren't stressed?
I like that.
What if you took all those complex concepts, all the dense industry jargon and acronyms you use every single day to sound smart, and you forced yourself to describe them using simple, conceptual workarounds?
That would be a game changer for a lot of people.
Just as an experiment, you might just find that by dropping the linguistic ego entirely and leaving the VIP words at home, people actually understand you far better than when you use all the right words.
I think you're absolutely right about that.
It is something to think about the next time you step into a high-stakes arena. Until next time, keep exploring, keep pivoting, and embrace the agility of the detour.